Colin Kaepernick, he and I we've had some Twitter dust-ups. I mean, he's insane. This is a racist guy. He really is a racist guy, and he hates our country. He hates America. So, all right, it's just another day that Netflix gives this guy his own special. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's going to be about how racist America is. It turns out to me it's how racist Colin Kaepernick is. I'm going to describe for the audience listening to this the clip that we're about to see, because well, you know what? Let's just play it. We'll leave my mic up, and I'll explain when it gets to the weird turn what we're going to see. But just for your listening at home, it starts off with the NFL draft, with football players being drafted by the NFL and sort of being looked at up and down by, I guess, the owners or the managers, what have you. And then there's a shift in the middle to where they turn into slaves. The players turn into slaves. These are actually actors, and being like looked at by slave masters. And this speaks to his overall point. Watch and listen.
They don't want you to understand is what's being established is a power dynamic. Before they put you on the field, teams poke, prod, and examine you, searching for any defect that might affect your performance. No boundary respected, no dignity left intact.
Here's the shift where they're switching from NFL wannabes to sleeves.
Come on, hurry. Look at that shape there. Look at this. Mr. Farmer got your bid. 30, James, 30 to you. 100. So, next one coming up, best one we got. 500, 600. Look at this here. Come on, who wants this?
Unbelievable. It's going back and forth now between NFL owners looking at players and would-be slave owners looking at slaves to buy. Unbelievable. Have you guys seen that?
Wow. No.
I mean, that's incredibly offensive.
It's
is.
incredibly offensive. And it doesn't make any sense. He says you're seeing a power dynamic be established. You're about to get paid multi-millions of dollars.
A job interview generally has a power dynamic. to
Right.
it.
I mean, for him to be like, okay, you're at the combine and they're timing how quick you run 40 yards to slavery. I mean, it denigrates the history of slavery where people were
Yes.
forced or taken from their families, and he's comparing them to people getting multi-million contracts.
Yeah.
That's exactly it,
insane.
Smug. Who made him show up at the NFL Combine? You know, to compare that willing and usually dream come true moment for an NFL football player to slavery? How does this wind up on Netflix?
I mean, look, this is Colin Kaepernick is one of the most deeply of his time characters that I can think of, in that the progressive left has become, over the last 10 years, entirely a victimhood culture. And you cannot have any control of your own destiny. It's all predestined by people who are, controlling what you do, what you think, where you can go, how much money you can make, which is, the exact opposite of the American dream and everything that conservatives fight for on a day-to-day basis. But where that goes now, extrapolated out, is that there's a constituency for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find it so fascinating that Netflix, which is twisting itself into knots to try to defend Dave Chappelle, is now encountering zero resistance from the mainstream media about
Right.
something like that, which is, I don't know anyone who doesn't find something like that deeply, deeply offensive.
It's so he, just a couple of points on it. It's, by the way, it's called Colin in Black and White, if you care to waste your time watching it. He says, okay, you heard the line. What they don't want you to understand, this is the NFL, is what's being established is a power dynamic. And of course, it's like, yes, and you are a player trying, are the players supposed to be the ones who cast themselves into the role of teammate? Or do we understand that there's a management structure and an ownership structure that is responsible for drafting you and picking you? Then he goes on, before they put you on the field, teams poke, prod, and examine you, searching for any defect that might affect your performance. Well, duh. You guys are probably the sports fans, but isn't that important to know if there is a defect?
Well, say you're going to draft like a starting pitcher. You want to know if he's had Tommy John surgery, right? You want to know if his elbow works.
What's
right?
Tommy
It's not about
John
being
surgery?
black or white. It's not about slavery. It's about you're about to spend millions of dollars investing in the future of this young kid. and you need to know if they can play.
Well, I just don't
Exactly.
understand also where the race component
Right.
of this
It's
comes
Well,
just-
that,
into.
it's
but
like
let me
really
have this. Well,
shoehorned.
let me help you, Josh, because he says no boundary respect, no dignity left intact. This is of the NFL. So he makes it sound like they're doing strip searches of the players. And this is where he makes the leap to slavery. So, I mean, it's just the absurdity to compare what he willingly went through. And by the way, I'm told that in his role as, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, his deal wound up being worth $43 million to being a slave is a real F you America moment. And I think it's an F you Colin Kaepernick moment. I can't believe somebody at Netflix didn't get up and walk their asses out over this bullshit propaganda about our country, the NFL, white people in general. This is outrageous.
Well said, Megan. Well said. Not to mention the fact that he's making literally tens of millions of dollars from Nike, which is operating at a 5-iron away from a concentration camp, right?
Right.
In China.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not some sort of moral equivalence that somehow this guy has figured out and the rest of us haven't. This is a guy who has exploited a capitalist system in a way that very few could, right? I mean, he has
It's so
been the
true.
beneficiary of outrage that he alone has created, that he's parlayed into multiple contracts with massive corporate entities, all of which have their own moral dilemmas.